Okay, the reason we're doing this full session exercise, here's some of the others. Husbands should submit to their husbands either to the point of physical harm to themselves and their children. All Christians should send their children to Christian schools.
Is this a sex and sex moment?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All Christians should send their children to public schools. Tongues is the necessary evidence for spiritual maturity or salvation. The sermon should come first. We ought to observe the offering plates passed should be abolished and receptacles in the back should be used. Board members should have indefinite or lifetime terms of service. A church ought not borrow money to build, they should even avoid good debt. The reason that we are doing this full session exercise is related to the fact that if I force you to do the 4 moves, the operating system, through them, if you find yourself teaching something that you don't actually believe, it reminds you that that's how people receive you on a Sunday. They think you're talking nonsense. Okay, so that's what we're doing with working through this. So we already have move 2, our big idea. We know what our proposal is. That we are wrongly or falsely assuming is the same thing that the Bible says. Okay, everybody with me? Okay, that you have to, you're obligated. It's one of the big 10 commandments type thing that you should fast for a 24-hour. Might be a good idea. That's not what we're arguing. We're arguing the fact that it's, the ultimate ethic in this talk. Okay, what are you going to say in a sentence as to why people would care to listen to you? What's at risk if they fail to hear from you today?
You don't experience the fullness of relationship with God that you could.
I think he said, you don't want to go to hell, do you?
Oh,
I was gonna say, you are in sin if you do not fast.
Whoa,
Yours was soft
That
and
was-
gentler.
that was extreme.
Okay, yours again was, you don't want to live in, you don't want to, how'd you say it?
I guess.
What's at risk is you.
So I'm confused. We're preaching on something we don't believe. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
that's right. We're
Okay,
promoting
so now
something
I'm changing my answer to you're going to hell if you don't.
Okay.
That helped me understand what you were saying.
Okay. Or you said
You are in sin if you are not fasting.
men sin if you don't. Okay. Now the big, again, we don't believe this. We're preaching falsehood right now.
Yes.
The
That's
big
important
idea
enough.
in this, in order to please God, you must fast, do without food
Oh, so I guess we should put this question.
for 24 hours. Okay. Now what sentence are we going to use to express the barrier?
What sense?
What's the barrier? Why won't people buy it?
They're hungry.
People love food.
They love food.
You won't buy it because you love food. What else? That's not bad, but what else?
Health reasons.
Health reasons.
Mhm.
Okay. You may say, well, I can't do that. That's going to cost me my life, right? I'm a person who navigates diabetes. They can affirm that. So you have to navigate the health barrier. So what would we say to that? You need to trust God, even in spite of the fact that
How's it?
you might put your health at risk. Okay, we've dealt with the barrier. Okay, how do we apply it?
This feels
to life?
wrong.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
You got 7 days. Pick one.
Pick a day. That'd be good. What else? Oh,
Maybe,
we're gonna meet here at the church.
maybe start with one meal.
Oh, you're gonna let them come into it, like
Yeah.
they only get purgatory.
Think about what you've done.
First week, just skip one meal. Second week, skip 2 meals.
Okay, good. Okay, everybody kind of see how that works? If you picked any of the rest of these, I didn't include it in your notes, but if you actually tried this out with each other, like try to say, whatever you don't believe, like you should, you can only call yourself a Christian if you send your kids to public schools. You could see how all of a sudden you'd be like, well, you should care about this because the public schools are going to hell in a handbasket, and we're called to be missionaries to do it. Okay, the barrier is, yeah, but I'm not gonna sacrifice my child to the world in order to be a sacrificial lamb. Well, you need to navigate that in the barrier. So you'd have to say, the way that we're going to combat that is to go to church every day or something like that. Well, what's the resource available? We're having a workshop that's gonna happen this week on how to protect your kids in the public schools, and a panel discussion with the superintendent and the kids. See how this starts to kind of flow? You're just thinking, oh, okay, I've got to think through this operating system. And again, when you say it, and I'm not going to preach on this now because it's in our notes for tomorrow, but you're going to hear me like get, like go nuts here. And I'm going to be flailing my arms, and I'm going to get really loud. Because what I'm going to say is that this is the way people are receiving your proposals. When you're going to say, I want you to pray like a child, are you suggesting that I have an attitude about the accumulation of wealth, the accumulation of my things, in ways that are keeping me from a flourishing life? Are you kidding me? I've worked my whole life to accumulate things and to enjoy them. What kind of a nutball are you, preacher, for talking about the fact that I should have the attitude of Jesus? You know what this would do to my identity if I actually like paid attention, listened, applied what you're talking about today? It gives you a feel for what you're up against. Not that neither of you thought about what you're up against in terms of this idea of prayer or possessions when you were talking. I know that you took that seriously, but this full session exercise just really helps us to say, and they're not the seekers out there. They're not the worldly out there. The ones who are sitting right here and are sometimes in leadership positions, and I could go on. So I'll save that for tomorrow. All right. Back for the notes.
Can I say, that's a really good reminder to me, just in the time that you spend in the word, and you're always thinking about, how can I live this way, or how can I explain how to live this way to somebody else? You forget that, like, they're not even there, they're like, it's not even on the mind that this is something. And so it's good to be like, you don't want to talk at this level if this is, and assume a lot of things if this is actually where people are. So
That's right. And tomorrow, the way we're going to say it is that when it comes to any particular proposition, any particular sentence, any particular biblical truth, our big idea, when it comes to any of those, us seasoned believers may be the unbelievers as it relates to that proposition. What did I say? Let me say it again. I need to restate it. We make the assumption that those who've been around the church a while, that they got it. They assume it with us. But when it comes to this assertion, like material possessions,
Yeah,
they're the non-believers. They're not, God owns it all. That's sweet, Pastor. That's really nice. I have mental assent to that.
Or I can get behind that.
I can
Yeah,
get behind that.
yeah, you're right.
But you're
People
not
should
talking
give
about-
away their stuff.
You're not, you're not talking
Everyone
about
else. Yeah, right.
possession.
Right.
Okay, so we have to think of them, and we're going to talk about it in the Ingalls scale tomorrow. We have to think about them as unbelievers, as skeptics, atheists, as it relates to actually applying the word of God. You know, well, you don't know my dad. I know you're talking about what people ought to do with their parents, but you don't know what my dad did. And so they excuse themselves. And so we do find ourselves realizing the challenge that's in front of us. Okay. All right. Now, let me just pull out for a minute and just say, in light of everything that we've done up until now, all I'm trying to say really is just, you need to do one sentence here and then fill it all in with everything else you're going to say to apply it, to talk about it, to illustrate it, to help it make sense. And then you're just going to say another thing here. And then you're going to do another thing here. And then you're gonna do another thing here, depending on how long you preach. You might do another thing here. Or if you don't have a lot of time, you just might only be able to do these two things, okay? What I'm saying is that each of these things needs to be, Cody, we just talked about this. It needs to be just one thing. It needs to all fit up under this sentence and make this sentence in ways that you don't have to have notes in front of you to be able to wrap your mind around it. Got it? So it's something like in a sermon that we're going to look at here in a little bit as we wrap up and then talk more about tomorrow's an illustration, one that I did. It would go something like this. When we're discouraged, we go back to things that are familiar. What am I trying to say? In this, when we're discouraged, we tend to go back to things that are familiar. We tend to leave Jesus is the implication. We tend to leave our practices because we're mad, because we've been hurt, because something's happened that's confusing. And as a result of that, we tend to go back to things that are familiar. Okay? Now, my text right here is going to be the disciples in John 21 went back to fishing. But fishing is the big idea that they went back to what was familiar. So everything's got to be about here. I don't put stuff that's down here, here. I don't start with what's here, here. What I just said was, I don't want to start with the text yet. I want to keep, there may be a scripture reading, but I want to just navigate this. And then I want to say, oh my, we're not the only ones who had this problem. Peter and the disciples, after Jesus not only was dead and resurrected, but then he was like gone for a while over the 40 days. And they went back to what was familiar, to the Sea of Galilee. And then Jesus had to come to them. And so then whatever gets said next, what are the ways in which you may be leaving something familiar and not caring about what Jesus said to care about, fishing for people. You'll hear me describe that later. Anyway, everything needs to stay in a segment. Don't jump around on me. That makes sense? And that's what having these headings, 1 sentence, 2 sentence, 3 sentence, 4 sentence, helps keep everything connected there. Let's look at this at the top of page 6. Some principles to keep in mind for equality, what I'm calling a mood sentence. Now we know one of these sentences is our big idea. Okay, we worked on that for quite a while ago. Number 1, with the exception of the risk urgency move, seek to say it in the positive. So it doesn't mean that there's a rule that we can never say it in the negative. But it's kind of easy to say, don't do something, avoid something. And again, I'm not saying that's not appropriate sometimes. But can you turn it to instead say, do this instead, or think this instead? So try to make it in the positive instead of saying it in the negative. Make each a grammatically complete sentence. And now you know how to do that by what am I talking about? Who, what, why, in the form of a question, and then make an assertion. Sometimes you'll say the assertion. It'll affect the topic. And then you got to ask, does that assertion, is that the same thing as what the biblical author would have said? And it has to have a consistency. And that's why we use our ever-loving minds. And number 3, avoid phrases that express no content about the topic. Like it's usually the better option, or what I showed you in the examples earlier. It's just like there's no relationship to the other, or it's a fragment. So if you have been a person who writes in fragments in your notes, you must stop it, or else I will be very, very unhappy. Okay. Force yourself to write in complete sentences, and I'll go first. I do it, I promise. Make each a declarative or imperative and not a question. So we addressed this a little earlier, but you do want to force yourself, even if you end up phrasing it in the form of a question, that you have clarity about what you're intending. So try to write it in a way that gets to where you want to go.
You're saying make everything in your notes a complete sentence. What if you already know that you have a tendency, if you make complete sentences, to try to do everything verbatim? Now you're losing eye contact because you're sitting here.
Thank you.
And I'm asking as a valid
I
question for my
appreciate that.
benefit.
Thank you. That comes into the subject of why I don't manuscript. And in a little bit, I'll show you what I do is an extended outline. So I think at the very minimum, we need the declarative sentence to get clarity.
Okay.
And then at that point, we may or may not manuscript. I feel you because if I manuscript, I found I can write a lot cuter than I can actually say it. So I end up trying to think about how I wrote it, and then I lose what you said. Now, others of us are skilled and we can, how many manuscript if you've done that? So you can find yourself manuscripting and you develop some kind of a style where you don't get stuck like that. You're only able to look down because of the time that you practice or whatever it may be that allows you to do that. So that's what I think. So yeah, you don't want to do that, but you do want to get clear in your sentence. So that you know what you're talking about. Okay, and then finally, this came up earlier, avoid compound and complex sentences. Doesn't mean you can't, but 2 at the most, but not 4, okay? Not 4. Don't let your big idea string out and out and out and out. Unless there's some kind of a list that you're making for some reason. Again, you can summarize. I don't have a good illustration off the top of my head, but you don't want to say 2 different or 3 different thoughts. 2 at the most, if you have to. Make sense? You have to edit a lot, leave a lot on the study room floor in order to get clear. Now, a memorable way of thinking through this is Hook, Book, Look, Took by Larry Richards. Hook, Book, Look, Took. Anybody heard that before? It's a nice little way of thinking through that. And then, Cody, are these the R words I gave you a few weeks ago?
Rescue instead of remedy was what you gave me,
Rescue.
and recovery instead of resources.
Yeah, so anyway.
I can use them, if you like those better, that's fine, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like them better. I just couldn't remember what I made those up off the top of my head. when
Risk,
you and I were
rescue,
talking.
roadblocks, and recovery are what you gave me.
Okay, so you can think through a different way that I included here. Risk, remedy, roadblock, and resources. Now, there are certain things I'd like for y'all to discuss this. There are certain advantages as we get now closer, because today we've been talking about clarity. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about philosophy and delivery. Clarity and relevance is really the two hands. Today we've been talking about getting a clear message, hermeneutically, etc. 4 sentences, 10 additional sentences here in a bit. And then tomorrow, relevance. I just want to pause and say there are certain advantages that written communication has that oral communication lacks. So if you will, Frank, if you'll take the lead while because I can't do 2 things at once, help note the things that books have, journals have, that oral communication does not. Okay, go. Lead that, if you would. Lead that conversation.
Lead that conversation?
Yes.
All right, I've got a question for the group. What are some things that written communication has that oral communication does not?
And that's their credit if you include the people on Zoom. Go ahead, Cody.
I love where you're going with this, by the way, but the first thing that came to me was written communication has the ability for me to
Stop.
go back and reread the sentence.
For the,
oral
for
communication
the
is
reader to pause themselves
Yeah.
and to contemplate.
There's footnotes. So if
Footnote.
I need to go and like, oh, what does he really mean by that? Oh, here's a little footnote.
Yeah.
It has punctuation marks
Oh,
of
there you go.
various kinds,
Punctuation marks.
bullet points, things like that.
Terrific.
Yeah, I was gonna say visual emphasis cues, so italics, bold, highlighting. There's emotional cues in speaking, but none of them are visual like that. Except maybe body language.
I guess nowadays though, people with voice texting are getting more and more used to audible communication, saying a sentence and then saying exclamation point. I don't know if anybody has brought that into their public communication yet, but
That's hilarious.
Other thoughts? Anything else?
I think you can make things more concise, like you have time to think about, if you're writing, you have more time to think about the concise way in which you'd like to state something as opposed to, oops, I wish I didn't say it like that, or.
that's one of the reasons why I manuscript.
I think you can also indulge a little bit more in writing. Sometimes you can wax eloquent because you know that they have the ability to reread it, or you know that they're going to read it at the pace that they are able to understand it at. When you're speaking, you have to speak at a pace that the majority of people are going to understand. So you control the pace when you're speaking. They control the pace when they're reading, which you mentioned. But I think just in the sense of like word choice, you can choose more complex words when you're writing. I think
Kind of in the same vein as all of it, I would also say that like in writing, the onus of understanding in writing is on the reader, whereas the onus of understanding in oral is on the speaker.
yeah.
Yeah. That's well said.
Let's go this person.
There's also the fact that you can pick things apart easier when you can visibly see them. And you can't visibly see words that come out of my mouth.
Yep.
So if you can look at, I write the word seriously. Well, if I say it, you heard the word. But if you look at it, you can say, he puts his little period on his I too high off of, you can pick it apart.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, if we're not picking ourselves apart and analyzing our words to see if they're the proper words in the proper order, we're not doing our job.
Did anybody get to watch Making Mummies Dance?
Yeah.
Dance?
That's great.
First part of it, yeah, at least I didn't finish it.
Yeah, if you get a chance to go back to it, and it's possible, Gabe, because I didn't get you signed up early enough. I haven't sent that to you, so you'll help me
It was
remember.
great.
I'll get that video to you. It's called Making Mummies Dance, or you can just look on YouTube.
It's a sermon, so it's not an hour long.
Yeah, not at all.
Or
It really makes that point that you were just making. All right, well, here's another emphasis of that. Just for the.
Many years ago, I read this that any punctuation which means that, well, I have to explain it in a different way. When I first noticed that people don't understand each other clearly when they speak together, it's because we don't use punctuation marks, which of course we do when we read or write. Period sounds like this. A dash. An exclamation point is a vertical dash with a period underneath. A comma, quotation are two commas, or if you happen to be left-handed, question mark is a little difficult. And finally, the code on it, two little dots. You can put them over each other, or you can put them under each other, or you can put them wherever you want them. That's it. I'm going to read a paragraph from this book here. In the open window, there suddenly came light. Beautiful Eleanor sat alone dreaming of but one thing. 2 years had passed since she met Sir Henry. She could still remember the unhappy evening when her father had thrown him out. They had been sitting in the park, and Henry had said, "Darlings, is this the first time you have loved?" She had answered, "Yes." And it is so wonderful that I hope it shall not be the last. Suddenly she heard a well-known sound. It was he. In 2 strides he was near her, embraced, kissed, and caressed her. What is love? He asked. He answered, said, well. Live without. He asked. I'm sorry. Yes, what have your thoughts been? And he answered, relief I made mother. Suddenly he had gone. Oh. All she heard. All she heard was the well-known sound of his departing horse.
That's awesome.
Victor, before I get that business about punctuation, could I try that in the Congress? You know, now, tip. Me. We may have had our differences. But I think we can both agree that Ford's Theater is a wonderful place to be.
All right. Pretty fun, huh? Okay. Some of us who are preaching, sorry, none of you in the room, but some preachers who are out of the room, we're saying too much. We gotta slow the boat down, and we gotta do punctuation. We gotta park there a while. We gotta say less in order to say more. And so that's the emphasis of this, is that we need more sentences, 10 more sentences in our operating system that will ensure our clarity. That when we get to a move sentence, when we get to saying something that we're about to do, that we have to take time out, leave some additional things on the editing floor, because it's really cool that Bethlehem is about 30 miles south of Jerusalem. And it's pretty neat that, you know, Bethlehem is in the Judean hills and headed towards the Dead Sea. But we don't care, not on a Sunday morning at 11 or 8 a.m. And so as a result of that, for those people out there who may be guilty of trying to say more than could be said, this is a reminder that we've got to take the time to do orally what written can do, which is allow people to go back. Now, I will recommend what happens at Percy Baptist. First time ever I had experienced this when I spoke there last year. And at the end of the sermon, they have testimony time. You get immediate reaction to your sermon. And so all of a sudden people are reflecting on things I just said. So it was positive. It was good. Have you ever gotten a like, oh, I didn't like that so far?
Not anything negative. The biggest thing with it right now is when there's nothing. You're like,
Oh, that happens.
no feedback. Well, but see, that's the thing, is then you're stuck wondering, did I just not hit anybody? Did it not land? Or did it land so well that everyone's still like, I have to really, because I've had a couple where it's like, I found out later that it was like, it landed so well that no one had anything to say at that point in time because they were still reflecting on their lives with it. But
well, I had so much fun with it. It was just beautiful to sort of hear people sit with it. So here's what I mean. Now we have 4 sentences, and I'm asking the question, you know, will you write a complete sentence? Will you study the passage together? No. Will you write 1 complete sentence? Will you add 3 more sentences? And now I'm asking the question, will you write 10 more? for a total of 14. And I'll explain those in a moment. This is how this was developed. I'd been preaching at Bethel Seminary in the Doctor of Ministry department, which was primarily already people who were preaching. And what was happening is that I was asking them for sermons that they were writing, and then I was trying to evaluate those. And that was, to varying degrees, kind of challenging because of the things that we're going to talk about, and that we've already talked about. But on this particular day, I'm sorry, I'm not being clear right now. What I'm trying to say is for the first 3 or so years that I taught it, watch this, in an inductive manner. And an inductive manner is very academic. That means you say the first thing, and then you say the second thing, and then you say the third thing. And nobody knows where you're going because you hadn't told them what you're going to tell them. You're just laying down the big idea. This is the way that all thesis and doctoral projects are written. You don't really know where they're going. You got to lay the groundwork like a research paper, right? And so you get to the end, and then you make your application and conclusion. What I was doing was I was teaching all of these things during the course of Monday through Thursday. And about Thursday afternoon, I finally got to what we just did this morning. I was just now, in the sense, getting to the kind of here's how to put it all together. But this year, I went to the board because I was getting the sermons back that they were sending me, because that was a part of their grading, is to send me a sermon after they got home from the intensive week. And I was getting the sermons back, and I was like, well, I didn't even teach. I had a significant shift in the quality of the sermons, the clarity and the relevance of the sermons, after I did what I'm about to tell you. On Monday, I went to the board and I said, just off the top of my head, it just came to me, by the Lord's grace. I went to the board and I said, you can write a clear and relevant sermon, at least clear, if you can write 14 sentences. And then I started going, okay, let's go. I think I got it right. Hope it adds up there. And so then I began to just deductively say, this is where we're going to land on Friday. I need these 14 sentences. I need you to send me 14 sentences when you get home, in a couple weeks. And then I said, okay, then your sermons will follow those 14 sentences. And the quality of the grades went way up, and I felt great about much better about my teaching as a result. So here's what that means. You've got your big idea. Say that with me. I got my big idea. I've got my 3 additional sentences, and those are risk, barriers, and we're going to call them next steps at this point, takeaway or application. I'll tell you why I have to navigate that later. Okay, now say this with me, the next line. 4, to restate it. Okay. Restatement is, read it with me, saying the same thing in different words commands the attention of the listener that what has just been deserves special attention. Been said. Boy, that needs help. Speaking of typos, bad presentation fails. Okay, there's one right there. It's saying the same thing in different words. What's repetition?
Saying the same thing.
Same thing in the same words, but restatement is saying the same thing in different words. I am not capable yet of accessing whatever AI is, except for one thing. I'm using it like an old thesaurus. Like I have a hard copy and I have to look for synonyms as I was working through my talks in our messages in order to find, paper like, okay, what's a synonym for? Well, then Google did that, but ChatGPT, I'm like, say this for next generation people. Say this in ways that are cute and turn a phrase. And so I've been using ChatGPT to do that. And you can tell me offline about all the other cool things that it's able to do, including Cody, I saw your things that your wife, who's a tech savvy, she created PowerPoint.
Claude, yeah.
She took your notes and created PowerPoint from Claude, right?
Claude AI, man.
Can you do that? Is that ethical? Yes. the answer is yes.
I haven't done it yet, but
And then a handout to go with it?
it could, yeah, it can she had it right if I hand out.
So summarizing and
clunky,
things
but-
like that.
It can also be.
Pretty cool. As you guys experiment with that, I'd be curious about it to see how, not to write your sermon, but to illustrate or to create the PowerPoint around it. So anyway, in Chat GPT, as a result, it's a way for me to find in a restatement, I'm thinking we might put in that big long sentences that we were talking about earlier and just say this shorter. Are you doing any of that, Frank?
Not to that extent. One of the things that I sometimes do with it, like I'll take when I'm done with a manuscript, I'll put it in and I'll ask like, if I were a single mom hearing this, what would be the roadblocks?
Oh, wow.
And then so I would give it a different audience to kind of
Wrestle with.
it.
And it's coming up
Like,
pretty
yeah,
good
a
stuff.
lot of great content that helps me think through even more. So what are more obstacles that I'm not even thinking of that certain groups of listeners will
Oh,
hear?
how fascinating. So it's a barrier tool. Wow. Anybody else? You,
I'll do it with like to help, just kind of wordsmith some things. Like, so I'll come with like kind of point, maybe it's a little clunky. I'll just say, hey, I'm looking for like a punchy way to say this is memorable and that people can take away and
move it
it'll
out.
give me, just help smooth out some things.
Awesome. On
Yes.
Zoom, anybody?
I also use it to help ensure that everything logically flows. So since I don't manuscript, I use an outline. Plug the outline in and to say, flush this out and see if it can bring your outline in a logical step.
Wow.
And that way I know that my outline is
Clear.
clear and flows properly.
Interesting. Jana, you do anything with? No? All right. Well, stay tuned. That's curious. Lots of conversations about that. Okay. So restatement. So what I'm saying.
These are restating the original four sentences.
Yeah, when you say a sentence, restate it into different words, and then maybe even restate it again. So like a neon sign blinking, the most important things, it draws people back into where you've been and helps them to say, oh, okay, I should put my shopping list down. I can come back into it. If you used words that, they were fuzzy on, it clarifies them. And I'll give you examples of what that looks like here in a little bit.
I said the restatement is of the big idea.
Of all four of your sentences, or all six of your
Just
sentences,
restate.
or all three of your sentences. Every time you have a moved sentence,
sentence.
you want to
Restate,
restate it in
Got it.
different words and maybe even a third time.
Gotcha.
Before you go into your definition, your illustrations, your, any applications, any further conversations about it. Okay? Now, we need three more. Say that, three more.
Three more.
To help us transition. Each of the moved sentences need transition sentence, except for the last one, and we're not transitioning to anything else, that ensure that the logic flows easily. Okay? Some of us are stuck in unhealthy patterns because we live out the labels we've been given. Transition. Having seen that, say that with me. Having seen that, we may be allowing labels to impact us negatively. What did the rebellion in the garden cause? Oh, wait a minute. What's happening there? Did you follow it? Say no.
No.
No, it doesn't make sense. Something is missing. Our mind is grasping for a better resolution. Let me do it again. Some of us are stuck in unhealthy patterns because we live out the labels we've been given. Having seen that we may be allowing labels to impact us negatively, now don't look at the rest of it. What would come next, naturally? What would you be asking? We're living out negative.
What are those labels?
What are those labels? What's another one that might come?
How are we living them out?
How are we living them out? What else might come up?
Why are we living?
Why are we living them out? Oh, y'all are picking up on it. Good job. Anything else? Okay, that's great. So there's a natural flow. And when all of a sudden I say, so then what did the rebellion in the garden cause? You're like, what? Okay. So when you force yourself to write in a complete sentence, starting with having seen that, I'm not saying that's what you'll say in your sermon, but when you force yourself to write it that way, you'll see that you are struggling with how to do it or how to say it. Does that make sense? Okay, let me Yet, oh, what's his name? Oh, snap. Where am I? There it is. Let's talk about this principle. And moves here. We're going to listen to John Ortberg, who's a skilled communicator and author, and he's going to illustrate this for us. Just a little clunky. Set.
Then he's gonna move.
Okay, now. Share screen. Woo,
Yeah, Rob.
man,
Great job.
I've never
thank you. Oh, wait.
do all of these things. It's very
Share sound.
Yeah.
It's not my first rodeo. Second. All right, Zoom people, here we go.
And it's hard to get from A to B.
Uh.
It's not the move that people are ready to receive yet.
He just
Let's
said,
go back to Bill's clip.
a transition sentence will help
In
you.
Bill's first move, he's telling this story, and it's just a very delightfully crafted story about playing racquetball. And he goes through the different levels of playing racquetball. I might be an A, I might be a B. One thing is for sure, I'm not in the C class. I'm not a recreational novice.
No, I started at the end. How do I get rid of that?
Drag it up top.
Drag it? Oh, good. Thank you. 1829. Now we're ready. One more time.
You'll be able to tell that's the dynamic that's not there. Another dimension of Bill's section that I want to talk about. We'll spend a little bit more time on this clip than we will on some of the other ones. A guy named David Buttrick wrote a book several years ago called Homiletics, Moves and Structures. Homiletics, Moves and Structures. And one of the things that he says in this book is that it's helpful to think about a sermon, about a message, not as a number of points, but as a series of moves. Not as a number of points, but as a series of moves. He said if you listen to people who are having a conversation, and the conversation is alive, almost never is it a series of points. Nobody says like, well, I'm through with work, so now I must drive to the store, deposit my savings, and delight my spouse. We don't talk that way. People go from moves in a conversation, from one thought to another. I saw a movie the other day, and it's about the relationship of a father with a son. Oh yeah, that reminds me of a conversation that I had with my dad. There's a little talk about that. You know, my family, we never even talk to each other. There's not much communication there. There's a series of moves that are going on that make the conversation come alive. Okay? Now, when you're having a conversation one-on-one, so this is a block of thought, it moves into this block of thought, it moves into this block of thought, and there's a sense of aliveness and dynamic and movement to the conversation of what's going on. When you're in a conversation one-on-one with somebody, you can make these moves very, very quickly. because there's only two of you there, and you can gauge from the other person's eyes and body and their feedback, their words back to you. You can tell, are they with me or not? One-on-one, you can make these moves real quickly and even be kind of sloppy and jump around with them. When you're speaking to an entire crowd, you must move much more slowly because you have to take everybody with you.
Much more
And the
slow.
moves must make sense. As I'm going from this block of thought to this block of thought to this block of thought, there has to be a connection there. Even if the audience maybe doesn't see it yet, there has to be a connection there. And right moves tend to flow on their own. You ever have a talk that you're working on and you're going to go from this section to that section and you have a hard time making the transition? Hard time designing a transitional sentence? Buttrick says if that's the case, it may be not that you're not good at designing transitional sections, it may be that you're making the wrong move. And it's hard to get from A to B because that's not the move that people are ready to receive yet. Now, let's go back to Bill's clip.
Okay.
In Bill's first move, he's telling this story, and it's just a very delightfully crafted story about playing racquetball. And he goes
There's different levels of playing racquetball. I might be an A, I might be a B. One thing is for sure, I'm not.
Stop talking. There you go. Yeah, we're done. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. You're finished. Yeah. Move slowly. These transition sentences, again, not what you'll necessarily say, but for the sake of your clarity, having seen that, you'll move through much more slowly and give time for people to catch up with you in terms of the move. Now, the reason I like to call them moves based upon this resource, and this is a 401 read, and only for those of us who, like it, like some of us do. So I'm not recommending you purchase this one. However, if you were to want to purchase it, the point about moves is in the first third of the book. So there's about these pages. In fact, you could just come check this one out and I'd be happy for you to spend some time with it. So it's a deep dive. This is also not an evangelical book, so we're learning from those who are outside, though certainly, would be within our larger Christian community. David Buttrick, if I'm not mistaken, he taught it. Anyway, doesn't matter. One of those Nashville schools, maybe a Baptist school. No, that's not it. Anyway. But it's different than points. That's all I'm trying to say. Different than points. I want to show you the way that I was taught in seminary as to how to develop a sermon. This is the outline that we used. It went like this. Introduction. And so then we would say, let's take John 21 was my passage, because that's easy for me to work with.
You're not on the camera. Too high.
You're on the right
Yeah,
camera.
you
No, you need to put it
You're
bigger.
higher than what the screen is.
Oh, thank you. How's that? There you go. Okay. We had an introduction. I don't like fishing. Okay, so that was my intro. Point one. Now, this is good because we were headed towards application here. We are people who go to familiar. I'm forcing myself to write in a complete sentence instead of fragments, bugging me. We are people who go to the familiar when discouraged, confused, etc. A. Peter and Posse went to fish. Back to the familiar. B, we go to what is familiar when we are discouraged. You picking up what I'm laying down?
Mhm.
2, Jesus calls us, no, sorry, we, application, we are to follow Jesus in what Jesus loves. A, Jesus called Peter 3 times to follow him in blah. B, I know I'm failing now. We are to follow Jesus. And at the end of each of these is that essentially what you'll see me do here in a minute is it's going to say that we love what Jesus loves, and Jesus told Peter what he tells us: if you love me, you'll feed my sheep, meaning you'll love what I love, and what I love is people. So you got to love what God loves, what Jesus loves, you love people. So that's the way this worked. And then I had this conclusion, and the conclusion would have sounded like 1, 2, 3. We can love people by praying for our enemies. We can love people by walking in our neighborhood. We can love people by anybody got anything else? I got 3.
Listening.
Say again.
Listening to them.
By listening to them. Okay. That's the way I was taught. All right. Now, when I would get the sermons, this is good. This is worth staying the whole day for right here. When I would get the sermons from many of those preachers, not from you all, but what many would do out there in the expositional expository world, who had been trained in our America's colleges and seminaries, some of them, mainly those who wanted to teach in this way, is that I would get them and they would be doing this. And all that what the moves did was I would take, I can make this make sense. I would take whatever applications they had here, and I would take the topic, I would take the subject, I would take whatever the applications that they noted in the last 5 minutes of their sermon, and I would drag those topics up into the first move, up into their introduction. We should be people who love our enemies. What's the topic? How do we love our enemies? Okay, I wouldn't answer it in the first move, in the introduction. I would just drag up the tension. Oh, have you ever had an enemy? Then I would make up a story. I would tell my own story. I would talk about what it means to have an enemy. I'd talk about somebody who had an enemy, something like that. Okay, now this goes to the point of I don't like fishing. Okay, so what does fishing have to do with the applications to love your enemies? And the answer is, it's about fishing. I don't like fishing because my father said, hey, you want to go fishing? I said, yes. He never took me. That's kind of the way that sits. Well, we find the disciples on the Sea of Galilee fishing. So you're going to hear tomorrow. Tomorrow's awesome because tomorrow's about relevance. So if you're a preacher today and this clarity thing's been like, we're going to get into philosophy and deep into relevance. And as a result of that, illustrating is not applying. I know you know that, but take note of it again. Just because you illustrate something doesn't mean you've applied it. Because fishing and fishing don't go together. But you listen to as many sermons as I've listened to or do listen to. Again, not by you all, but I mean that. But in ways that happens, you'll leave these 2 days. Don't quote me. Don't be like, well, Rod wouldn't like, you illustrated, but you did not apply it. Don't do that. Don't get me in trouble. Speak for yourself. But you take these applications and you drag them up here, create some kind of a scenario or 3 that they can then rain down through. that's all I would do. And the preachers, when I would evaluate them or show them, they'd be like, how did you do that? I'm like, you did it. You just didn't, you waited for all the application at the end. You were preaching academically. You were preaching for your Old Testament prof. You were preaching in the ways that the academy thinks. You weren't thinking through the best of homiletics. Okay. And again, we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Don't bury the lead.
Don't bury the lead. That's well said. This little book right here was one of the early ones that turned me onto it that Don had us read years ago called Preaching That Connects. This was from the editors of Christianity Today. And they wrote about, how journalism applied is so critical to capturing or creating a good hook for your people as a result. So I promise you we're going to get out of here on time. I'm watching the clock. I got 7 minutes before it's a hard 3 o'clock and we're done. Now, these 10 more sentences then are, say it with me, 4 to restate it. Say it.
4 to restate it.
3 to help us transition.
3 to help us transition.
Now we're up to 7. So what's next? The next one is what I call a dead dog story. Now here's where this comes from. I showed up at Perkins Restaurant that was right over here. That's now like a sushi place, isn't it? And Larry Watkins, who is from Arkansas, said to me, you preachers, you're all the same. And he was a former youth pastor and now is in men's ministry back in Fayetteville. But he was here for a season nursing a church hurt, selling something at the time for a season. And Larry said to me, dead dog story. You preachers all the same. You all got your dead dog stories. I said, what in the world are you talking about? And in his southern drawl, he said, oh, you know what y'all do. He said, and then he started telling me the old Yeller story. You know how old Yeller, you had a dog, he was a faithful dog, loved your dog, and that dog came with you one time. It fought off a lion, mountain lion, and saved your life, but it was all wounded, and then it laid by your bed, and then it died in your arms. And he said, we're all weeping and crying. You did that yesterday. I said, that's exactly what I do. I tell a dead dog story because it brings in the conclusion, in the final move, it brings it home in some kind of a heartfelt, vulnerable story. So again, it's a formula. I'm not saying you do it. Don't just tell World War stories. That's an old joke. Back in the war, there's a band of brothers and they fought violently. That's kind of preachers laughing. Oh my gosh, why did my mind go there? It must be late. I just thought of the squirrel. You know how you're like, squirrel, hey, look, a squirrel. I gotta stop and tell y'all about the 4 preachers who went to the conference together. They all showed up. They're in the same denomination. They got to this conference and they're standing out in the lobby and they thought, we want to get real with each other. And the first one goes, I'll tell you what, said, I just feel like I need to confess this. Says, when I get away like this, said, I just have such a temptation. In fact, I've given into it already. I just get out and I just want to drink. Said, all I want to do is just drink alcohol to the excess. Said, just pray for me because I need to practice moderation. Next guy says, well, as long as we're being vulnerable, that I'll tell you, when I get out like this, I just want to go down the boat. And said, I just gamble. Said, I've lost a lot of money at these conferences. And I just wanted to kind of you guys to be with me in that. And third guy says, yeah, I said, I've got a problem too. Said, I just have a tendency, just my mouth goes off. And I just tell off-color jokes. I said, they're from my past and I remember them. And I just find myself wanting to tell them. And the fourth guy says, yeah, I said, I got such a problem with gossip. I can't wait to get out of here. Squirrel. Okay. A dead dog story. One of the moves is some kind of a dead dog story, which may be from your own life or another source for a fitting story to finish the sermon. It's a word picture that the preacher imagines. And so I think that can be really, really helpful. Now, we'll come back to this tomorrow. Use details, fill in the margins. You can say a young woman, but say Janet instead. The more specific you are in telling a story, the more you name the street. It was Morgan Street, not a street somewhere in the neighborhood. Name the street.
talked about that in the Mummies.
He did,
Yeah,
yeah,
really good.
and it creates a connection that's so powerful. Quote what is said, don't just describe it. In other words, change it into dialogue. We know this in writing as well, so critical. Dad, I know you're angry that I'm going on the mission trip this summer instead of coming home to work on the farm. Is much better than saying, hey, and the son said, Dad, I'm not coming home. You see, to put it in a dialogue and a way of discussion, put it in quotes. And then consider leaving the tension unresolved sometimes. You don't have to resolve it. The next one, then, so now we're up to 8 sentences. Did we get there? 7, 8, 10 more. 9, yep, one more to land the plane. I always want you to have a summary sentence. Have the last thing you're going to say, because there's nothing worse than watching the plane just keep circling around. Just keep thinking, is he going to crash? Is she going to make it? Are we going to get there? So allow your last sentence. I always write mine down so that I know to just stop. And as again, things that we've said are chapters in this book. I've just kind of fleshed them out and added a few things to them. The shape sermons take would be the developmental questions. And then he calls this start with a bang. We'll talk about more about that tomorrow. Start with a bang. Don't lollygag forever. And then he said, calls it quit all over. Okay. So we need to do that. Now, what then is the last sentence, the 10th sentence? Next page. Pastor, we need a title. You ever have that from the church secretary or from the
Yes,
promotional flyer?
last week.
Yeah, just last week. Pastor, we need a title. So you somehow are summarizing your big idea into what to put on the marquee or onto the flyer. All right, 1 minute. If you look down at the 14 sentences, you can begin to see how these get fleshed out. See that? Okay. Then tomorrow we'll look at moving this into putting it all together. Page 9. And you can see that I've referred to this today. But it'll take us a few more steps to get there. Not long, but a few more steps. And then we'll end up on where you'll be able to see John 21 and the way that breaks out into an extended outline. All right. We're done. All right, back tomorrow for those of you who can make it. Stop recording.